Flight controller is gonna go for landing. Retro. Go. I don't go. Guidance go. GNC. Go. Econ. Go. Control. Go.
Ninth Planet Audio.
Capcom, we're go for landing. You're go for landing. Over.
Is there any other areas we should hit up? Do you want to go through your old neighborhood?
Ooh, let me think. We could go, this is kind of back near the mall again, but we could go to the stadium for the Y'alls.
Oh, for the Y'alls, yeah.
We can also...
Listener, it's been a heavy couple of episodes. We've delved into some difficult histories, spoken some hard truths. We've met a lot of people in our quest to change my high school team name from the Rebels to the Biscuits, or whatever, and so far, we haven't changed anything. I think it's time to maybe take a little break and to learn what it's like to really actually change a team name from blah to amazing. And thankfully, we don't have to go very far.
So we'll start down there at the kids zone and then I'll loop you around and then we'll go upstairs.
Just off I-75, right here in Florence, lies the home of a small baseball team called the Florence Y'alls. And listener, everything about their stadium is a delight.
We have two huge inflatable slides that also go up, but they're away for now.
And you have like these nice, like sort of patio lights.
We got a tour of Thomas More Stadium, home to the Florence Y'alls and the Thomas More University Saints. Formerly the Rebels, remember?
Yeah, they have the big Florence Y'all, like the water tower, the very cool kind of like Andy Warhol style.
Yeah, so that is all BLDG. They painted that. They painted our spread your wings and fry. Very KFC. That's why it's the press bucket and not a press box.
Smart.
Bucket of chicken. We really wanted to be as Kentucky themed as possible.
Today, let's take a break from our quest to change the Boone County Rebels to something better, and instead talk about how the Florence Freedom became the Florence Y'alls, and how something as small as changing the name of a baseball team can drive change that reaches far beyond the stadium walls.
Y'all or nothing. I love that.
And then this one on the other side says, to my old Kentucky home. So it's pointing towards home plate.
Oh, that's really nice. Oh, am I going to get choked up?
Hey, let's go out to the ball game.
I was a lady rebel. Like, what does that even mean?
The Boone County Rebels will stay the Boone County Rebels with the image of...
It's right here in black and white in print. They might.
Bigger than a flag or mascot.
Anytime you're trying to mess with tradition, you have to be ready for serious backlash.
From Ninth Planet Audio, I'm Akilah Hughes, and this is Rebel Spirit, Episode 4, Y'all or Nothing. In the previous episode, I mentioned that Thomas More University here in northern Kentucky changed from the Rebels to the Saints. Around that same time, in 2004, before I graduated and left home, it was announced that my hometown was getting a new Frontier League baseball team. They were called the Florence Freedom. It was in the shadow of 9/11, and a lot of people in the area had served in Iraq. Freedom made a certain amount of sense, I guess, but there was never a lot of excitement around the team.
I don't think he had a purpose to naming it the Freedom.
Yeah.
I think it was just somebody said that and it was like, okay, yeah, that works.
This is Jay Becker, the president and founder of BLDG, a design firm located just a few minutes north of Florence in Covington, Kentucky.
Somebody said, what about the Florence Freedom? And he was like, we need something. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's it. Let's go with it.
For years, they went with it, and the Freedom was fine. The logo looked like it was chosen from a book of generic sports logos. The whole thing felt so phoned in that I'm literally making myself bored talking about it. For a design expert like Jay, who also loves sports as much as he loves Northern Kentucky, the generic feel of the Freedom drove him nuts.
So I reached out to Clint that owned the team. If I reached out to him 3 times, I reached out to him 23 times. Yeah. And he would always say, we don't need brand, we don't need design. I don't get it, we don't need it.
Yeah, like and, Freedom is enough.
Well, then they were sold.
Yeah.
And we had a new sheriff in town.
On the surface, there's nothing wrong with Freedom. People came to the games, they played fine. There was no urgency to change the name. The logo and team may not have changed, but ownership changed hands a few times over the last 20 years. The original owner sold the team due to a white-collar crime scandal to a new ownership group led by Clint Brown, who passed away in 2018. His widow, Kim Brown, then sold the team to a new ownership group led by 4 local businessmen, and they wanted change.
the team was doing well. Not in the ticket sales were doing great, but they were stagnant over a couple of years.
This is Max Johnson, the Y'alls general manager. He's been with the team for 10 years.
We put it out on Facebook, and we just said, hey, what do you think the new name of the Florence baseball team should be? And we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of submissions.
The Florence Freedom will be no more. No, they're not leaving town, but the new ownership group wants to give the team a new look, and they're asking for your help to do this. There's a contest happening right now to pick the new name of the team. The one thing that is necessary, Florence still needs to be a part of it. So these are some of the ideas that you came up with on our Facebook page. One suggestion, the yellow-bellied catfish.
I love it.
I don't know about that one. Another is the Florence Frontiersman. And the newsroom's favorite, the Florence Y'alls. But you got to say it like that.
Y'allers.
So the winner will get 2.
We took the time to condense the list down to the 5 most common submitted names from our Facebook and Instagram and Twitter polls. I don't remember all 5 names.
Quick fun sidebar. The other names considered were the Go-Getters, the Fossil Jockeys, the Pop Flies, and the No Socks.
The Y'alls was obviously one of them that was on there. The Y'alls was obviously the most popular because of the water tower.
Just to jog your memory, Florence has that giant red and white striped water tower that they changed from Florence Mall to Florence Y'all. It's been that way since the 70s and is definitely the most, possibly the only, iconic thing about Florence, Kentucky. When you look back on history, some things seemed completely obvious, but at the time, renaming the Florence Freedom to the Florence Y'alls was anything but.
I mean, one of the managing partners looked me square in the eye and said, just don't tell me you're going to name my baseball team after a GD. I don't know how sensitive we have to be. Just tell me you're not going to name my baseball team after a goddamn water tower. And I said, I'm more than happy to tell you that. In fact, we're not going to name your goddamn baseball team after a water tower. We're going to name it after your Hollywood sign. And the narrative was flipped.
It was Jay's insistence on naming the baseball team after a water tower that changed everything for a baseball team so small, it's likely you haven't even heard of the league that they play in, the Frontier League. Even for new owners excited to bring fresh eyes and excitement to a team, there's little incentive from a business standpoint to change. Rebranding is a huge financial investment, altering signs, merchandise, marketing materials, as well as the revenue lost from a diminished brand recognition. And in a small town like Florence, people have to like it. Rebranding a team is a gamble, absolutely. But sometimes, the gamble is worth it.
The water tower is such a staple within our community.
Yeah.
If you Google just water tower, it's the first one that comes up.
Yeah.
So
it's the iconic water tower.
It is the water tower, and that's kind of the running joke that we have going on social media is we throw up other towns' water towers and we grade them. The Freedom name works in Milwaukee, it works in New York, it works in Chicago, it works in Nebraska, it works in California, but you couldn't do that with Y'alls.
Right.
It's synonymous to the South, and us being the gateway to the South and having, something like the water tower to, back our brand. It's not our brand. We don't, we're not the water tower. We're Y'alls culture, and the water tower just embodies, a certain percentage of, what we, like to project because it's Florence Y'all.
Yeah. The Florence Y'alls. To me, it is the freshest, most authentic, energetic, inclusive baseball team name ever. It's the South, it's Florence, it's the water tower, but also bigger than the water tower.
Cincinnati doesn't want us, they call it Kentucky, and Kentucky doesn't want us, they call us Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, that's what Y'alls came from. It's this indigenous culture of Northern Kentucky.
Minor league sports have been going through a renaissance these last few years. That renaissance has been driven by making ballparks a fun place to be and rebranding teams into memorable, often hilarious names. There's the Rocket City Trash Pandas in Madison, Alabama, the Yard Goats with a logo of a goat chewing a baseball bat from Hartford, Connecticut, or the Savannah Bananas in Savannah, Georgia, whose slogan is, "We make baseball fun." There are dozens and dozens of minor league teams like this now, often sporting similar thick-line cartoonish logos. They're both unique and cookie-cutter at the same time. The Florence Y'alls embraces the irreverence, but the feel is entirely different. It's a hard balancing act that they pull off flawlessly.
It's not just a feeling, i.e. bananas.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We can go bananas. Like there's more to it. And I'm not dissing on minor league baseball design. It all is very flat. It all looks the same. It's cartoony.
Yes.
Call it quasi 1994.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And what we really sold them was it's a heightened brand.
But change is hard. And even if the brand isn't all that beloved like the Freedom, there are still going to be people that push back against it.
We still have a few people that walk around the park in Freedom jerseys. You know, I mean, we're cool with that.
What do those even look like?
Yeah, I've always said I want to do like a Comiskey Park disco demolition where we like gather up all the old Freedom merch and we blow it up in the outfield.
Yeah.
Where there's change, there's haters. We'll be right back after a short ad break.
Literally 500 negative comments about the word y'all. Like, we're not hillbillies, we're not this, we're not that. And it was all on Facebook.
Yeah.
Go figure.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is that we started to look at the characters that were commenting on y'all and whatnot, and we realized they weren't from here. They were like just minor league trolls. We released at like 3 o'clock. At 3:05, Barstool came out and said, this is the greatest name in minor league baseball history.
Wow.
You know, and it just went from there. You know, I can't remember there's a female reporter on ESPN. She called. She was like, I want any and all merch you get, or whatever you make, I want it. MLB called, you know, there was kind of a waterfall of people that wanted to understand it better.
Yeah.
And, you know, thank you, Barstool Sports. We'd love to work with you guys. But there was just so much driver around the story itself. Yeah. And then all of a sudden we started leaking out those secondary marks and those, you know, y'all or nothing. And then it took a life of its own.
Yeah.
And, but that was the goal. Right. That was the purpose of the brand.
Yeah.
And, you know, to those of you that aren't familiar with branding, it's the greatest single way of telling stories for businesses, services, products, whatever.
It was so reassuring to hear that even when you have an idea that's as good as y'all, Facebook is going to light up with naysayers. I don't really know if the Freedom meant much to the community, but the fact is that changing it was hard regardless, even if it was changing to something that spoke directly to Florence's unique identity and celebrated its local culture. Also, I hate to say it, but HB Deathridge also helped bring the Florence Freedom to the area. I don't want to play armchair psychologist, but I bet it's hard to see one mascot go, much less two. Speaking of mascots, the Florence Freedom started with Liberty the Eagle and then just kept going.
By the way, I love that.
It's a move I'm learning from Liberty.
Liberty taught you that?
Yeah, he did. And we've got the Diva of the Diamond Bell, and then we have Wally, the water tower. Mm-hmm. All three of the mascots here at Florence Freedom, which is awesome.
Yes, the Florence Freedom had 3 mascots. There was Liberty the Eagle, who was an eagle, obviously, and Belle, who was pink and looked sort of like a duck crossed with a cow, but people insisted was a lady eagle, and Wally the water tower. Yes, a water tower who was big and bulbous and I think must have been inflated around the poor person inside him. But listener, while most everything about the Freedom was forgettable, one thing was not. Because Wally the water tower walked slowly and carefully in his big inflated suit so that Y'all Star could run.
This year marks the transition of a good friend we've grown to love over the past 8 years. Our Diva the Diamond Bell is retiring. This transition into retirement and senior care could be one of stress and worry, unless that transition involves Florence Park Nursing and Rehab Center. Let Florence Park Nursing and Rehab Center, along with their friendly staff, welcome your loved one in this time of transition. And who knows, you just may run into our friend Belle while you're there. Florence Park Nursing and Rehab Center, the full-service nursing home of Belle and the Florence Freedom.
That incredibly strange cross-promotion was to announce in 2016 the retirement of Belle and usher in the new era of Y'all Star, a more streamlined, more athletic water tower. This is a podcast, so you have to Google to see what he looks like. Stop driving or Pelotoning or folding laundry, which is my preferred podcast activity, and look up Y'all Star. Do it.
Actually, we introduced Y'all Star while we were still the Freedom. Mm-hmm. And Y'all Star, if you don't know, is our mascot. He's a baseball player. That's, you know, his head's the water tower. And he's our all-star on the team. So, you know, Y'all Star was actually, you know, a part of that Freedom brand originally, and then we just, you know, moved him over to the Y'all side of thing. I feel like he's caught on a lot more since we've been the Y'alls. When we were the Freedom, again, we weren't nationally known. He wasn't a national independent mascot in a sense. And you'd walk down the street, or you go to a festival, or you go to a school, and everyone would be like, hey, Peppermint Head, Head. And so he was, his he was Peppermint Head to 90% of the kids, because they didn't know who he was, or that he was tied to a baseball team. He had the jersey on, it said Freedom, but or hey, Water Tower guy, or so now I think he's been out in the community more. We're involved with the other mascots. That's something that we could easily transition over. That was the old with the new.
The old with the new. There were so many strategies here that we can implement for our Rebel to Biscuits or whatever journey. Crowdsourcing to get the community involved, the continuity with Y'all-Star. But the change wasn't easy for the franchise itself. The freedom changed to the Y'alls in 2020, the year that brought about a little too much change for most of us and began the cascade of unprecedented times.
So we had kind of more of a slower rollout with the Y'alls brand because of what we had to do to adapt to play baseball in 2020.
Yeah.
So the first year that the Y'alls were on the field, they were playing against the Freedom. Yeah. So we hosted 2 teams, and Lexington hosted 2 teams. And we played home and homes. So there was that transition of, the Freedom out and the Y'alls in. And then in 2021, there were still some COVID restrictions until about the middle of June, where we had our inaugural season, but we had completely phased the Freedom out, phased the Y'alls 100% in, changed our team shop around to Y'alls 100%. And then it was just go, go, go. As unlucky as we were lucky at the same time. And I think that helped us kind of find our footing. A lot of teams, when they rebrand, it's boom, boom.
Yeah.
For us, it was kind of like, okay, we got some time to figure this out, able to figure out our own voice and everything.
Y'all, I bought so much Florence Y'all merch during that coalition trip back to Florence. It's a perfect mix of local pride and baseball culture. They go all in on the Y'all theme. Shirts that say Y'all or nothing, or we ball for Y'all. They have the mascot, Y'all-Star, riding a Kentucky Derby-style horse, Interstate 75 on a fleece blanket. I've never felt so spoken to and proud to be spoken to. Take my money, Spirit Shop. Everything about the Y'alls, from the merch, the jerseys the team wears onto the field, the way they've painted the stadium toned-down colors of red, white, and blue, it all has a vintage Americana feel. But it doesn't give Cracker Barrel racism. It manages to look to the future while honoring the past.
If you look at the uniform system that we built, it was really built off the 80s Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah.
Very understood, throwbacky.
Yeah.
Kansas City Royals, Expos.
Yeah.
Baby Blues. But things that were quintessential baseball.
Yeah.
We leveraged that past familiarity to bring it forward. And merch is the second largest piece of the revenue model. Your business model's not just about putting butts in the seats, it's about creating a brand that's so alluring that we can put it on a t-shirt and everybody wants to buy it.
Yeah.
Kind of one of the cool things to go back and see is, through our online shop, we see where we're shipping everything.
Yeah.
We've shipped to New Zealand, we've shipped to Australia, we've shipped to Europe. The reaches that we have with the new brand that we weren't getting the traction with.
Yeah.
When we were the Freedom, people locally knew who the Freedom were, but not nationally. Now we've been voted #1 by a couple of different organizations. I'm going to toot our own horn a little bit there. We made the right decision from a business standpoint and from a brand.
Since the rebrand, the area around the stadium has changed dramatically, especially with the mall losing appeal amid the general decline of malls. However, we all know the water tower has always been the real focal point of Florence.
It had actually just been built when I was a kid.
Really?
Yeah.
So do you remember when it said mall?
Jay grew up in Erlanger, and now BLDG's headquarters are in a 3-story walk-up storefront in downtown Covington, Kentucky, about 20 minutes north of Florence.
So we've been here 11 years. We turned 12 in September. The first floor was an actual gallery in the day.
Covington is where I lived as a child, before we moved to Florence, and where my mom worked in the public schools for 30 years. It's much blacker than Florence, much poorer than Florence, and much, much cooler than Florence.
We have 4 full-time artists on staff, and they just took it upon themselves to decorate that.
That was even true back when I was in high school. Friends and I would drive from Florence to hit the Anchor Grill or to watch our cars roll uphill. No, really, at the local landmark called Gravity Hill. Nowadays, Covington is going through something of a renaissance itself, driven in part by its riverside location just across the street from Cincinnati, its beautiful turn-of-the-century architecture, and its embrace of street art and murals, which are painted everywhere. BLDG and Jay have played a part in the revitalization of Covington and their studio, which feels more like a chaotic art space than any other creative agency I've ever visited.
All of the vintage Cincinnati beer brands we're bringing back to life
Nice.
with the partnership. You'll see upstairs we do a ton of screen printing still.
BLDG studio space shares a wall with City Hall, which moved into an abandoned JCPenney. Listener, the vibe of Covington is impeccable. The vibe of Florence.
The vibe of Florence was it was a mall.
Yeah.
Like to a high school kid, it's like what was in Florence? It was a mall.
Yeah.
And that was the catch.
And it was also like more country, yeah? Like
totally. The whole backside of Turfway Park were farms.
Yeah.
It was very rural.
It definitely
and the airport had one building.
Right.
One building.
Growing up surrounded by great sports teams, Jay has loved sports and sports uniforms his whole life.
You didn't have kids' sports team merch. Mm-hmm. So like my brother, we'd take white kids' t-shirts with markers and make t-shirts because you couldn't buy them. You couldn't buy a Reds t-shirt for kids in those days. What really got me excited about sports and everything else was I loved the Marquette basketball uniforms, the Al McGuire years. And I have every one of the actual old 70s Marquette uniforms except 77, the year they won the championship. And I've looked high and low and actually found somebody that had one, and we just can't agree on price, but I'll get it. I'll get it.
You will get it.
But I was a kid that loved uniforms. We had UK basketball, we had Louisville basketball, and then when I was a boy, we had the Kentucky Colonels.
Yeah.
They'd play half their games in Cincinnati.
Jay is a dyed-in-the-wool uniform sports geek, and the Y'alls isn't the only team they've done branding for. In fact, and we didn't know this when we walked in the door, he has been working with a university that has recently shed its Native American mascot. He can't name names, and so everything here is intentionally vague. But listener, what are the odds?
The school we're working with is very sensitive to the tribe, and they're wonderfully brilliant about it. They've gotten the buy-in from the actual tribe. They have a ongoing relationship on campus. I think they have a little less than 100 people that are on scholarship from there. And what we just saw was an opportunity to say, hey, you're doing it right. How can we help you leverage this? And it'll be interesting to see where it lands in the long run, because there are other factors that we don't control.
Right.
You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, the stuff that makes me really excited is when people are doing it right. And they're honest and they're fair.
I don't know how much you can reveal, but are they changing?
Not
are they bringing a mascot? Or
we're not there yet. So we're kind of pushing towards the opportunity to kind of refresh what they have. Like they did, they rebranded and brought a different mascot forward that didn't really have a past life to it. And it wasn't introduced in a way that the student body and the people really understood it. So how do we create a look and a feel, a culture similar to the Y'alls, but that's not familiar.
And so, you mentioned the school is doing a good job. They're being very cooperative too. They're invested in doing something good and right. Have you ever worked with or pitched somewhere where there was a denial about it being wrong or reluctance to change it, even as the truth of it is revealed, as receipts are pulled, and they're just saying it's not offensive, it doesn't matter. Do you have experience?
Yes, and yes, and yes.
Oh, good. It's not just us. We'll be right back with that drama after a short ad break.
It was an old line business that was reaching for relevance. And they didn't want to see the world that they knew that existed change. And we had to say to them at the start of the project, why are you here? We're change agents. That's what we do really well. And if this isn't what you want, then that's fine. We'll give you whatever money you've given us back. And then we can go our separate ways, and high five when we see each other at the bars or whatever. And for us, the problem kept deepening. And the more we looked at and said, this is where you change for value, and this is where you change for a better future, relevance, they had no interest in it. And so I think we had kind of a meeting of the minds internally here, and everybody just agreed that we can't help them. So there's some people you're not going to change their minds, and I don't think anything ever happened with it. Honestly, I think they went into shutdown mode almost.
Yeah, like this is what it is.
This is
it's
what.
not bad, and it's,
exactly.
You all are saying that we are bad, and our culture is bad and offensive, and like even if you point to all of the other parts of the culture that they could be proud of, they
didn't care.
I'm going to stop things for a minute here. Remember at the top of the episode where I said maybe it was time to take a little break from our pursuit of changing the Boone County Rebels name? I meant it. This episode has been labeled Y'alls episode on our production sheet since day one. When we showed up at Jay Becker's door, we had not said a single word to him about the Boone County Rebels. We were here to talk about the design work he did for the Y'alls, for the episode you're listening to right now, about the very fun minor league team in my hometown. That was the entire expectation. Hell, in the spirit of radical transparency, this is the email our producer Dan sent to Jay.
Hi, Jay. I'm a producer on a new podcast from Akilah Hughes and iHeartMedia that deals in part with sports branding. Akilah is from Florence, and we'd love to talk with you about the work BLDG has done on the Florence Y'alls, which is just spectacular work. We'll actually be in Florence and Cincinnati all next week, and would love a chance to maybe come by the office and talk about the Y'alls. Thanks so much. Dan.
That's it. That was the whole pitch. And when we sat down to talk with Jay after the tour of their space, creaky floors and all, that was what we expected to talk about. But over the course of the conversation, it was clear that there was something more here than just a discussion about a baseball team. And so, I decided to come clean.
So I'm going to show our hand a little bit more. I am a graduate of Boone County High School, class of 2005. Go Rebels.
But you want to change the Rebels.
Yeah.
I will help you change the Rebels if you would like that.
I would love that.
I love this.
I don't know if you know the cliff notes about what they tell about the Rebels, but I'll give you a rundown.
I could never figure out how they got away with still using it.
Yeah.
That's my throw out.
Same. And so what's strange is when I was there was a sort of persistent lie that this...
I told the Rebel Without a Cause story to Jay, including the new findings we have, of course, that this was not possible. But it was fun to tell another local native this lore and have him say
that...
I've never heard that, by the way. I had a lot of friends that went to Boone County High School.
Right. And I only heard it, it's funny, I'm trying to think back now, especially since we're here and we're talking to people, but I'm like, did I hear that in high school? Or did I hear that from Facebook years later? But I'm like, I'm pretty sure in high school...
Sounds like Facebook years later to me.
Right, but
There's
it's like...
justification.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. There's already so much pushback. We're talking about people who are a lot older, who are mad because you're trying to change my childhood.
My belief system.
Yes, exactly.
Which,
and this is
yes,
a commentary.
we are.
Yeah, like, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're invested in trying to change the mascot to the Biscuits. What are your thoughts?
Tell me why.
Well, I think because...
Why the Biscuits?
Why the Biscuits, of course.
It's very hard to pitch someone on a sports team rebrand when their literal actual job is doing sports team rebrands. But I tried.
I think because the refrain that I always hear is, this is about our Southern heritage. Kentucky was never in the Confederacy. As a person, as a black person, Bourbon, Kentucky. Oh, Biscuits, Kentucky. They are like, they identify with... It also has the same number of syllables. Seems like they don't have to change the cheers. Very iconic. And so, just going with something that's vegetarian, obviously we would have some other things. But when you hear Boone County Biscuits, how does it hit you,
Well, I tried.
I think if it were a minor league baseball team, it'd fly fast.
Yeah.
I think it's probably challenging because I feel like high schools always want to wrap their arms around something that they feel it gives them substance.
Yeah.
Not that I don't think Biscuits could. It's
yeah,
just
substantive.
I would just worry about that. Is it a little bit too irreverent for just your regular old high school?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like, is it fun and happy and enjoyable and you get a kick out of saying you're a biscuit?
Yeah. They're not, the Fighting Biscuits doesn't really sound so
Bingo.
tough.
Okay, I get it. Biscuits may be delicious, but maybe they're a hard sell for a high school sports team.
What do you put on the side of the football helmet? Is it like just a static biscuit, or is it like a biscuit around a bowl of sausage gravy? And it's
point.
like
I always saw a mascot kind of similar to Y'all Star, honestly, but a biscuit head and then a body.
You're going through that like we would go through it, just so you know. So that's perfect process format.
It didn't take long before we weren't just talking about the pros and cons of biscuits, but talking about organizing strategies and how to enact real change even in the face of resistance.
In our mind, like, we would have to do
focus groups.
Yes, maybe that you know exactly what
we
I
wouldn't, and we wouldn't even look at it as a focus group. We look at it more as just community engagement. Like, how do you engage the community of the school? You know, you're going to get. I'll be honest with you on this. You're going to get a different engagement from the students than you are from residents of the community. Plain and simple. There's great opportunity. You know, even if you got anything. Like if you came up with 5 concepts and said, this is our 3 or whatever it is, this is what it could be, and biscuits is one of them, then let them choose.
It's, you know, not lost on me that next year is, I guess, their 70th anniversary. Like, it's a big deal for the school. It seems like it could be a moment of change and moving forward. And, like,
I love it.
There are glimmers of it, but we don't have a champion in the school for this. And I don't know necessarily that the Board of Education is anti, but I know that they're scared.
Anytime you start to bring up design, people get really nervous.
Yeah.
Like, is it going to change us for the worse?
Right.
What I'm hoping to present to the community and the school board is that we can't be worse than nothing, which is what we have. The students have a letter B with the word rebel in it. What I love about going from freedom, which means something different to liberals and conservatives, to y'all, is that y'all is a deliberately inclusive word. Y'all means all. It's like everyone is welcome. It spans every sort of demographic, and it's used equally by Black and white folks in the South. I hope for something equally as empowering and forward-thinking for my high school.
Go get them.
Thank you.
Go get them. I think it's awesome. Because like I said, I could never understand how they pulled that off.
Yeah.
And they pulled it off by apathy.
Yes,
You know,
exactly.
just like, well, we got rid of that. And
Right.
we got rid of the people running around with those flags. And
Exactly. So, like, what
But it's,
could be
we're all
offensive
cool,
here?
right?
And it's like, no, it inherently must be. Like, and, you know, half steps just aren't enough.
We threw biscuits out as a conversation starter.
Right.
And now we can look at this within a continuum of where do we want to land to tell our story.
Absolutely.
You know, because Florence needs a new story.
Florence needs a new story. When Jay said that, it put a lot into perspective. In many ways, the story of Florence is the story of change. I'm not just talking about now, where the demographics of the town have shifted significantly in the last decade. And I'm not just talking about changing a word on a water tower from mall to y'all, or a baseball team from freedom to the y'alls. Florence, Kentucky has always been changing. Hell, it's had 4 different names: Crossroads, Maddentown, Connorsville, and Stringtown before settling on Florence. So why not a new team name for Boone County High School? Why not a new story for the kids there today? Kids who look so different than the ones that chose the name Rebels in 1954.
I would have loved as a teenager to be able to have what is here now.
Oh, you and me both.
It was just nothing. So I'm like, if we could just get a little bit more of that energy just a little further south.
There was something that you wanted more from this city. You couldn't get it, so you went to LA.
Yeah.
You know, I first moved to Chicago because of the same thing.
Yeah.
This is a different town now.
Yeah.
It really is. And I'm so excited that you're here.
Yeah.
Because you're a homie.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, but you get it and you understand like what the hard mood to get to where we are is.
Yeah.
It's also a very interesting time in Northern Kentucky, to be honest with you, where more of the fresh, new thought is coming to light versus the old bad habits.
Absolutely.
Good luck. And like I said, I'm happy to help any way we can help.
We'll definitely be hitting you back up.
We'll even let you make this ground central if you want to.
Oh, I mean, we'd love to have a landing.
Yeah, you got it. Well, now you got it.
Yeah.
You got it. So I think the journey of engaging the students and the community, get ready.
Yeah.
It's a fun ride.
Yeah.
You know, not always the easiest, but it's a fun ride. You'll see that passion start to come out.
Yeah.
And that's when you know you're going in the right direction.
All right, we're finding our allies now. We're finding people willing to speak up, willing to lend a hand. Florence needs a new story. Boone County High School students need a new story, and together, all of us, we're going to tell it. Rebel Spirit is a production of Ninth Planet Audio in association with iHeart Podcasts. Reporting and writing by me, Akilah Hughes. I'm also an executive producer and the host. Produced by Dan Sinker. Edited by Josie Azam. Our assistant editor is Jennifer Dean. Music composed by Charlie Sun. Sound design and mixing by Josie Azam. Our theme song is All the Things I Couldn't Say, performed by Busty and the Bass, courtesy of Arts and Crafts Productions, Inc. Our production coordinator is Kyle Hinton. Our clearance coordinator is Anna Sonnenschein. Production accounting by Dilpreet Singh. Additional research support from Janice Dillard. Executive producers for Ninth Planet Audio are Elizabeth Bakewit and Jimmy Miller. Special thanks to Jay Becker and the whole team at BLDG, the Florence Y'alls, Amber Hoffman, Hillary Delaney, and Leslie Chambers. If you have a racist mascot at your high school, or are an alumni of a high school with a racist mascot and want to share your own experience, please email us at rebelspiritpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you.